welcome to the deep dive. Picking up on our journey through anatomy and physiology, using Mr. Hostler's excellent lecture notes for nursing students, we're kind of shifting gears today.
Yeah, we're moving into the endocrine system.
Right, specifically diving headfirst into the brain's key endocrine command centers.
Exactly. These notes, which pull from Chapter 14 of Herlihy's The Human Body and Health and Illness, they really zoom in on three structures: the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the pineal gland.
The control panel, basically.
You got it. Think of them sending out these chemical signals, hormones that, well, they regulate pretty much everything. Metabolism, growth, hydration, reproduction, even sleep.
It's quite a shift, isn't it? From the super fast electrical signals of the nervous system we've talked about to these, slower chemical messages floating through the blood.
It is. And a really fundamental concept that Mr. Hostler introduces right away, and we absolutely need to get this, is negative feedback.
Negative feedback. The body's thermostat.
That's a great way to put it. It's the main way the body keeps hormone levels stable.
Okay, so the notes give that example, right? Low blood calcium triggers a hormone.
Right, parathyroid hormone in that case.
And then once calcium levels rise back to normal, that signal just shuts off. The result stops the cause.
Precisely. And this whole elegant system, it really kicks off at the very top with the first player on our list today, the hypothalamus.
Okay, let's dig into the hypothalamus then. Mr. Hostler emphasizes it's right there in the brain, constantly sampling the blood. Like, what's it looking for?
It's like mission control scanning everything. It's checking body temperature, how much water is in the blood, nutrient levels, even the levels of other hormones already circulating.
So it senses if something's off balance.
Exactly. And when it detects an issue, it knows it needs to step in and send out orders.
And its main way of doing that, particularly for the pituitary gland sitting right below it, is by sending its own hormones down.
Yes, precisely. The hypothalamus makes these special hormones that travel just a tiny distance through a dedicated little network of blood vessels straight to the pituitary. These are basically the command prompts.
Okay.
You've got two main types. Releasing hormones.
The go signals.
Right. They tell the pituitary, okay, start secreting your hormone. And then you have inhibiting hormones.
The stop signals.
You got it. They tell the pituitary, all right, ease up or stop releasing that hormone. It's that crucial on-off switch mechanism.
So hypothalamus gives the orders. Pituitary carries them out. That's why they call the pituitary the master gland, I guess.
Yeah.
But the notes are clear. It's not just one simple thing, even though it's tucked away in that bony spot. This stella turcica.
That's a really critical distinction Mr. Hostler makes. The pituitary actually has two very different parts, functionally speaking.
Two lobes.
Yeah, two lobes. You have the anterior pituitary.
Okay.
This part is like the factory. It actually makes and secretes its own hormones, but only when told to by those releasing or inhibiting hormones from the hypothalamus.
Right, and the other part.
That's the posterior pituitary. This section is, well, it's more like a warehouse. It doesn't make any hormones itself.
Oh.
Instead, it stores and releases two specific hormones that were actually produced way up in the hypothalamus.
Okay, that distinction makes sense. Anterior makes, posterior stores and releases. So let's focus on the anterior pituitary first. What are the main hormones it's manufacturing there? The notes list several key ones.
Okay, let's walk through them. First up often is TSH.
Thyroid-stimulating hormone.
Oh.
Sounds straightforward.
It is. Its job is right there in the name. It stimulates the thyroid gland, which sits in your neck, telling it to release its hormones T and T.
And those control metabolism.
Yep. Hugely important for regulating how your body uses energy.
Got it. Okay, next on the list in the notes are FSH and LH. They sound kind of related, something to do with reproduction.
You're absolutely on the right track. They're grouped together as gonadotropins because their targets are the gonads, ovaries in females, tests in males.
Makes sense.
So FSH, that's follicle-stimulating hormone. In women, it gets the ovarian follicles growing and boosts estrogen. In men, it's key for sperm development.
Okay, and LH.
LH is luteinizing hormone. In women, it's the big trigger for ovulation releasing the egg. Then it tells the leftover follicle, the corpus luteum, to make progesterone. In men, LH stimulates specific cells in the testes, the Leydig cells, to produce testosterone.
Wow, okay, so FSH and LH together are really orchestrating a lot in the reproductive systems, all directed by the anterior pituitary, following orders from the hypothalamus. What about ACTH?
Right, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
This one's target is the adrenal cortex, that outer layer of the adrenal glands sitting on top of your kidneys.
Oh.
ACTH tells the adrenal cortex to release its hormones, especially cortisol.
Cortisol, the stress hormone.
The main one, yeah. But it also does other things, like helping regulate blood sugar and inflammation. It's pretty vital stuff.
Definitely sounds like it.
Yeah.
Then we've got growth hormone, GH. Seems obvious, makes you grow. But the notes mention some important clinical points here.
It does. GH promotes tissue growth, bone lengthening, especially when you're young. In adults, it's more involved in maintaining muscle and influencing metabolism. Okay.
But the key clinical things Mr. Hostler highlights are about too much GH. In a child, before their bone growth plates close, excess GH causes gigantism. They grow incredibly tall.
Right.
But in an adult, where those plates have closed, the same excess GH causes acromegaly. The bones thicken instead of lengthening, so you see enlarged hands, feet, facial features. Very distinct signs.
That's a really important distinction for assessment. Okay, last one from the anterior pituitary list, prolactin. The notes give a little memory trick for this one.
Yeah, a simple one but helpful. Prolactin stimulates milk production in the mammary glands after childbirth. Pro for lactin for lactation or milk, helps you remember its job.
Okay, so that's the 6 key hormones the anterior pituitary makes. Now, the posterior pituitary, you said it doesn't make hormones, just stores and releases ones made upstairs in the hypothalamus. Which ones are those?
The two main ones highlighted in these notes are ADH and oxytocin.
ADH first. Antidiuretic hormone. Let's break that down again. Antidiuretic. So it works against producing a lot of urine. Exactly. That's its core function. ADH primarily targets the kidneys.
How does it stop urine production?
Well, it doesn't stop it completely, but it reduces it. It tells the kidney tubules to reabsorb more sodium back into the blood. And because water passively follows salt...
Water gets pulled back into the blood too.
Precisely. So less water ends up in the urine, meaning you conserve water in the body.
Which helps keep your blood volume and blood pressure up.
Right, that's the result, yes. And the notes make a really strong connection here to a specific clinical condition called diabetes insipidus. It's a key example of ADH function, or rather malfunction.
Diabetes insipidus. Sounds like regular diabetes, but you said ADH is about water, not sugar.
Exactly the point Mr. Hostler emphasizes. They share the diabetes name because of the excessive urination, but the cause is totally different. In diabetes insipidus, there's either not enough ADH being made or released, or the kidneys aren't responding to it.
So what happens then?
Without ADH's signal, the kidneys just can't hold on to water. They produce huge volumes of very watery dilute urine. That's called polyuria.
Okay.
And losing all that water leads to dehydration and an absolutely intense thirst, especially for cold water. That's polydipsia.
And the insipidus part?
It means tasteless or bland. Historically, they tasted urine to diagnose. This differentiates it from diabetes mellitus, where the urine would be sweet due to sugar.
Wow. Okay, so extreme thirst, constant urination of dilute urine, but normal blood sugar, think ADH deficiency, think diabetes insipidus. That's a critical link from these notes.
It really is. Now, the other hormone stored and released by the posterior pituitary is oxytocin. And the notes point out something quite unique about its control mechanism.
Right, it uses positive feedback, not negative. That's unusual.
Very unusual for hormones. Most use negative feedback, that thermostat system. Positive feedback is different. It's a reinforcing cycle. The output actually amplifies the original stimulus.
Like during childbirth, I think the notes mentioned that.
Exactly. That's the classic example. When labor starts, the baby's head pushes against the cervix. That pressure sends signals to release oxytocin. Oxytocin travels to the uterus and causes contractions,
Which pushes the baby's head harder against the cervix.
which signals for more oxytocin release, which causes stronger contractions. It's a loop that keeps building intensity.
Until the baby's born and the pressure stops.
Precisely. The stimulus is removed, the loop breaks. The notes also give the example of milk ejection, or the letdown reflex.
Oh, yeah. How does that work?
When a baby nurses, the suckling stimulates nerves in the nipple.
Okay.
That signals oxytocin release from the posterior pituitary. Oxytocin then travels to the breast and causes tiny muscles around the milk glands to contract, squeezing the milk out.
So, more suckling, more oxytocin, more milk release, another positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And remember, this is different from prolactin. Prolactin made the milk.
Oxytocin gets it out. Got it. That's a clear difference. Okay, hypothalamus, pituitary. What's the third brain command center Mr. Hostler covers? Ah, the pineal gland. Whereabouts is this one?
It's tucked away pretty deep in the brain, kind of between the two cerebral hemispheres. It's quite small.
And its main claim to fame, according to the notes.
Its primary job is making and secreting the hormone melatonin.
Melatonin, okay. That's sleep hormone.
That's how most people know it. Its release is very strongly regulated by light and darkness. Basically, it's secreted primarily when it's dark.
Which is why it's so important for regulating our sleep-wake cycle, our circadian rhythm.
Absolutely. And the notes touch on a very relevant point for today: how exposure to light, especially bright light or blue light from screens at night, can actually suppress melatonin production.
Oh, okay.
And that disruption can interfere with your sleep cycle, potentially leading to insomnia or maybe even affecting mood over the longer term. It really highlights that connection between our environment, like light, and our internal endocrine system.
Hmm.
So, just to quickly wrap up these brain centers based on Mr. Hostler's lecture points, you've got the hypothalamus as the big boss, monitoring everything and telling the pituitary what to do using those releasing and inhibiting hormones.
Right. Then the pituitary, the master gland, with its two parts. The anterior part is the factory, making TSH, FSH, LH, ACTH, GH, and prolactin.
And the posterior is the warehouse, releasing ADH and oxytocin that were actually made back in the hypothalamus.
Perfect summary.
Ah,
And we saw ADH is crucial for water balance. Not enough causes diabetes insipidus with all that dilute urine.
that oxytocin is the odd one out with positive feedback, vital for labor and milk ejection.
Correct. And finally, the little pineal gland deep inside, using melatonin released in darkness to run our daily sleep-wake clock.
Now, Mr. Hostler often includes these little clinical scenarios in his notes, which is so helpful for nursing students. Let's apply what we just covered. Picture this. A 22-year-old college student comes in. Chief complaints: intense thirst, constantly drinking like over a gallon of cold water every day and having to get up multiple times a night to pee.
Okay.
But importantly, a blood test shows their blood sugar is completely normal, and a urine test, it shows the urine is very clear, very dilute, low specific gravity. All right, so based only on what we've discussed from these specific lecture notes, what condition should immediately jump to mind?
Well, the normal blood sugar is a huge clue. It tells us it's almost certainly not diabetes mellitus, the sugar kind.
Good, keep going.
So the massive thirst, the constant peeing, and especially the urine is diluting. It sounds exactly like that ADH problem we talked about.
Yes, diabetes insipidus fits perfectly.
So the condition is diabetes insipidus, and the hormone that's likely deficient is,
Antidiuretic hormone, ADH.
and the core problem, the physiology behind the symptoms.
It's that without enough ADH signaling the kidneys.
They just can't reabsorb water effectively.
Exactly. They can't concentrate the urine. Water just flows right through, leading to the polyuria, the excessive urination that causes dehydration, which triggers the intense polydipsia, the thirst. And that low specific gravity confirms the urine is mostly water, lacking the solutes it should have if ADH were working. It's a textbook case based on these notes.
This has been a great deep dive. These structures in the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland, they might be small, but they wield incredible power over the entire body.
They really do. And understanding how they talk to each other, those feedback loops, what happens when things go wrong, like with ADH deficiency, it's just fundamental knowledge for clinical practice. You see it play out in patients.
So next time, following Mr. Hostler's path, we'll continue down the endocrine trail, focusing on the thyroid and parathyroid glands in the neck.
Yeah, we'll get into how they control metabolism, body temperature, and the really critical balance of calcium in the body. We'll also look at conditions like hyper and hypothyroidism.
Something to think about until then, maybe. Based on what we learned about the pineal gland and melatonin sensitivity to light, how much might our 247 screen-filled modern world be subtly messing with these deep-seated endocrine rhythms, potentially impacting more than just our sleep? It makes you wonder about those ripple effects.
That's a fascinating and maybe slightly worrying question to ponder. Definitely food for thought.